Stop checking your likes. Shaking off the need for approval and living an incredible life.
Hey, it's Heather Chauvin, wife, mother of 3 boys, former social worker, breadwinner, recovering hustler, and stage 4 cancer survivor. I'm not a fan of that term, by the way. Beyond all of these titles and labels, I'm a human being, just like you, attempting to navigate it all while feeling good. My goal on this podcast is to show you that you can live an energized, sustainable life both at home and in your work. It doesn't matter if you stay at home full-time, if you work from home, you're a CEO, a successful business owner, or trying to find some inspiration. On this show, I attempt to keep it real with stories, interviews, and random thoughts. This is not a business or career podcast, and it's not a parenting podcast. It's both and so much more. You will laugh. You may even cry. And you may even get a little frustrated with the truth you've been hiding from yourself. I believe all human behavior is a language, whether it's through your child's behavior, your health, or a relationship. And when we learn to listen instead of react, we begin to understand what it truly means to feel alive and in control. It's time to put your big girl pants on and find your brave. Let's go.
Today, I am super excited, ladies, to share my interview that I did with Susie Moore. Susie is a former sales director in Silicon Valley. She is a life coach and advice columnist for some of the world's biggest media outlets. Her work has been featured in Business Insider, Forbes, Entrepreneur, Marie Claire, Huffington Post, Today, and Oprah.com. She is a native to England and now lives and works in Miami. Okay, ladies, so I'm really excited to share Susie Moore's book with you. Stop Checking Your Likes. You can check it out on Amazon or wherever you, if you can get into a local bookstore, that would be amazing. Or even contact, a small bookstore locally to you, see if they can get it in so you can buy local. But I met Susie a while ago, actually, in New York at one of her events that I was at. And I instantly, when you meet this woman, when you play that game with people and you're like, okay, what are 3 words that describe me? And you ask other people, well, one, it could be absolutely terrifying. But if Susie asked me this, I would say confident, radiant, and standing in her power. That is not 3 words, but you understand what I'm trying to say. And Susie is one of those women that perceives to have tremendous confidence. And I say perceives because I think a lot of people look at others and think, she's confident, I want to be like her. But remember that we are all human having this experience. And confidence from this conversation that you are going to learn with Susie is a skill. It's not something you're born with. It's not something that just innately comes to you. You have to work at it. And oftentimes when I'm working with women, they will say the same thing to me. They'll say, oh, you're so confident, or, this is easy for you. And I laugh. I literally laugh at them because they're just projecting, right? They're projecting their internal struggles, their internal resistance, pretending that everyone else has it more difficult than they do. Or the opposite, that they have it more difficult than everybody else does. Here's my point. Confidence is a skill. So I'm really excited for you to dive into this conversation and also get Susie's books. Actually, she has multiple books, but the one that she just published, Stop Checking Your Likes. Another reason why this is so important to me, or I was really intrigued by having this conversation with Susie, is because I absolutely believe that at the core of everything, part of when I started my business, I was so terrified of my son's, self-esteem. And I dove into it. I could tell he lacked confidence and there was fear coming up and he didn't feel in control of his big emotions. And it actually drove me and one of my partners, a colleague of mine, to start these girls' self-esteem camps. And so we would run week-long summer camps where we would talk to girls about self-esteem. And as somebody raising 3 boys, I found it really interesting that we were doing this with girls, because culturally it's okay to talk about self-esteem in girls, but this is for men and women. This is a global issue. So I believe at the core, we first need to understand how to feel in control of our big emotions, our mindset, and embody that energy that we want to become. Because once you do, you are so unstoppable. One more announcement as well, if you're listening to this. I want you to head on over to heatherchauvin.com/business. On June 19th, I'm hosting what I'm calling a Mastery Accelerator. And this is just exclusive for women in business. So I talk more about it on the website. So head on over to heatherchauvin.com/business. And if you sign up, you can sign up immediately. If you sign up on or before June 1st, you also get a fast action bonus, which is my Speak and Inspire event, which is June 4th. So it's live, it's in person, and all of those details for that are on the website. So head on over there, heatherchauvin.com/business. All right, let's dive in.
All right, Miss Susie, so excited to have you here and have this conversation.
Me too, Heather. Thank you for having me today.
So we have this book right here.
Yay!
Wrote this book.
That's it.
Checking your likes. I was digging into this book and I wrote down a whole bunch of notes.
Awesome.
And I was so surprised. Like, I've met you previously at Pitch Please, and you know, you come across as somebody who is confident, and I know you talk about this a lot, and putting yourself out there and a go-getter and all of that, but that's not what you grew up with.
No.
So tell us a little bit of the story and how you got to where you are today in a nutshell. Yes. I mean, it's always a loaded question.
How long have you got there, Heather?
Yeah.
Yes, well, my background was, I grew up with a quite strange family. I share a lot of my kind of dysfunctional stories in the book about moving around a lot, living in shelters, growing up on welfare, having addiction in my family. And the reason the reason I want to tell those stories is because I just want to normalize the fact that our backgrounds are all, different. There is no such thing as, like a regular family or a regular life. And I, despite, I think, having some challenges back then, I was always just so focused on creating the life that I wanted to create. Once I realized that was in my power, I realized, as a human being, that all the responsibility within you, if you want to claim it. I wanted to, I guess, share that some odd things can happen, some unwanted things can happen, but it doesn't have to be really something that impacts your future. So, yeah, I mean, I think I fell in love with self-help when I was young, and it's really been such a game changer for me, Heather, knowing that I have to take accountability for my life. The future belongs to no one, that, as human beings, are very powerful creators, and just like keeping on with that. I mean, that's still something that I just live and practice all the time.
So a lot of the women in the community, like the podcast is called Mama's in Control. So women who don't have children are like, I don't qualify. And we're recording this right after Mother's Day. And I wrote a post, actually a podcast that went out, said, listen, I don't actually, why? And not only that, but Mother's Day is such a hallmark thing of seeking external validation, like respect me, honor me. And then we're all set up with this disappointment. I'm like, listen, all women are mothering. All women are mothering and nurturing somebody. But what about if we start to honor ourselves? What if we start to respect ourselves? And so I'm so curious what was that first in for you when it came to personal development? Like, how did you know it existed? How did you know you could take ownership and responsibility for your life?
Oh, yes. Oh, it's a good question. I actually read my self-help book when I was young. I was 15. I found this book. It's called The Magic of Thinking Big. It's still one of my favorite books of all time. And Heather, I mean, I don't know how people out there live without constant self-help. Like, I'm consuming it all the time. Like, truly, like a book every few days, because it's so important for us to manage our mind. I mean, I consider it really my only job. Like, my only job is to stay, frankly, in a good mood and to stay focused, because then if I do that, then everything else is easy. I'm nice to my husband. I don't mind going for a walk. I work happily, you know. And so I discovered my first self-help book when I was around 15, a teenager, and I've kept going ever since then. And one thing that I've noticed too, Heather, is that the self-help books that I read, and some of them, you know, success-based, finance-based, more spiritual, they all have the same principles, essentially. And the first one has to be, you know, taking responsibility, knowing that you can't abdicate your power, you know, live a life with excuses. You can't have results and excuses in the same lifetime. And so much of it is just, you know, taking it upon yourself, which feels daunting initially, but it's really where your freedom is. And a whole lot of fun too, can I say? May I add?
Yeah. You made a comment about, like, you didn't know how people are not into personal development. And
Yeah.
I have no idea how people raise like humans
Mhm.
and businesses, and
Mhm.
like personal development isn't like a high priority for them. So I'm like, how are
Yeah.
you existing in the world? I used to think that about people who didn't move their bodies, like didn't physically work
Mm.
out. And I was like dying inside when I wasn't moving. I'm like, how can you do that? And of course I was playing this comparison game and all of that.
Yes. Mhm.
So, okay. So the tagline of this book is shake off the need for approval and live an incredible life. And a
Yeah.
lot of the women that I come into contact with, they're looking outside of themselves for this approval or like validation,
Mhm.
seeking, well, I guess approval, validation might be the same thing, but
Mhm.
also, what the heck am I trying to say? Comparisonitis from the external world. So
Yes.
what do you say to that woman who's like, I don't know how to create an incredible life. I'm never going to be like her. I'm never going to have
Mm.
that. I don't know where to start.
Yes. You know, I think it's such a common feeling for everybody. If not in all life areas, at least one, right? It's very easy to, you know, see how other people are parenting or how they rock in a business or how they manage their, I don't know, their diet, their workout, whatever it is. And it's okay to be inspired, right? Sometimes even that person who we like envy a little bit, or we like to check up on her because she seems to get it so right in this area or that area, like that's okay. It's okay to kind of seek inspiration from other people. The only time that it gets kind of tricky, seek inspiration, see someone who's further ahead than you, whatever that means to you in any life area, and for like appreciation to actually come into play when you see that person. Because I mean, I couldn't be a self-help author now if there weren't other self-help authors, right? And I probably wouldn't be living this awesome like kind of life in Miami. I moved last year unless I knew or I heard of other people kind of doing it, living in Miami, leaving New York was possible. So I think, you know, it can coexist where you can seek inspiration, feel appreciation for people who are leading the way, but know that your life, your worthiness, it it's so completely undeletable, so utterly fixed, no matter what you've done, no matter like who you think you are, or how badly you've lived, or the mistakes that you've made. Your worthiness as a human is fixed. So to compare, it's just this terrible illusion, this game that we play, and it isn't even real. Like, whose life is more valuable than another's, right? Who has more of a right to be here, to take up space? Like, we all deserve to be here. And so comparison in a negative way is only, it's just this bad, unhealthy game you're playing with yourself. And it's simply just not real.
Interesting. I've never heard of worthiness like that. Like your
Mm,
worthiness is fixed. And I
it's
was
so
like, tell
fixed.
me more about that. But
Yes.
what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So Heather, I kind of tell this joke in the book. It's a joke, but I mean, it's real because it's like, so for example, just say, Heather, you know, you went hiking or skiing somewhere with a group of people, and then you got lost from the group somehow and they couldn't find you and it was getting dark. Would they think, let's just think for a second, is Heather worthy of rescue? Wait, how many Instagram followers does she have? Is she verified? Wait, is she thin? Is she
Hmm.
married? Like, did she fill her taxes on time? Like, like It's absolutely, it's nonsense how we, in that regard, in a physical regard, we're like, well, of course, every human life is worth saving. Everyone deserves a rescue. Even a felon deserves rescue. But we don't apply that to anything else. We're just like, yeah, but no, she's worth so much more than me. Or he's worth, worth so much more than me. Their life is more important. No, it's not. We are different, but the same in that way. And I just think if we could let this in 10%, Heather, right? Just 10%, then our lives change so much because we're not proving ourselves all the time. We're not coming from this place of like scarcity. Wait, it's okay that I'm here because look, I'm doing a good job. See, I'm suffering, I'm sweating, I'm working hard. That kind of goes away and you operate from just a different place, a different higher self.
Yes. I mean, I almost had to die to figure that out. Like when I was diagnosed with cancer, because I was like, I always say I'm a recovering hustler. And it's been interesting because during this, I mean, we can unpack so much of my crap here, but
yes,
I kind of I let go of that a little bit. And then I didn't know who I was without being, a workaholic. I didn't know who I was to just have that space and say, I'm going to sit here and just enjoy this book, or I'm going to like just go for a leisurely walk and I'm not going to like manage every 60 seconds of my time. And it was so attached to my identity as a human. Yeah.
Oh, yes. And when you think about it, like, but between then and now, like, do you feel like your work suffers if you're not feeling hard on yourself? 60 seconds managed in this perfect way. Don't you dare make a mistake. Like, what's the difference?
I think things have gotten so much better because of it, but there's just that vulnerability of allowing yourself to like sit in that, I don't want to call it purgatory phase, where you're like, sit in your shit, choose a different action, and just allow the current to kind of follow in place.
It's true. You actually, when you can operate from a more peaceful place, we're far more creative. Like stresses shut our brain down. Like our body's in survival mode. How can anything good come out of us if we're just like, wait, I have to do this, just to take up space? That's just simply not how it is, And when you also, I've interviewed some pretty cool people like Sarah Blakely, like Kris Jenner, Ariana Huffington. Yes, they ask a lot of questions, they do all the things, but they're having fun. Like these people are having fun, Heather, too. And I think that is such an undervalued, it's such an undervalued experience, like having fun, like who's got time for that? We can all have some time for that. And I think having fun not only is the point of life, you're missing the entire point if you're not having any, but also I think it makes us better. It makes us more obviously joyful. We attract more and it opens up different, we have access to different parts of our brain that create our best work too.
What are the attributes of the people that you admire most right now from where you are in your life today?
I value people who, well, I guess there are a lot of things, but at the moment in particular, resilience always. Like resilience is really only the thing that you need, right? I mean, when you think about like success and failure, it's the same road, right? Success is just further along. Most people just give up too soon. They park way too soon. So I think, resilience or, this term grit that's used a lot now. And then also, I just think people who care about others. I mean, when we think about like the long game of our life, and often we don't, we're just like this year, this quarterly target, this, short-term goal. I think when we look at the end of it all one day, like who we were we kind? Like, did we do our best to be just fair and decent to others? I really value that too. And I think without it, nothing else really does mean so much.
Yeah. And in the book, actually, I want to talk about this. In the book, I don't know what chapter it was. I just wrote down, fall madly in love with rejection.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Oh, Heather. Well, I always joke that I reject rejection or that I'm rejection proof simply because I don't interpret it that way. I mean, so you and I connected at a media event, and you know that being in the media involves a lot of rejection if you're doing it yourself, and I recommend doing it yourself. So I mean, what is rejection really? Like if we break it down, I offer something, it's not a match for somebody at that moment. That's it. Really, that's it. There doesn't have to be a story around it. There doesn't have to be disappointment around it. There doesn't have to be a whole like worthiness discussion. We wouldn't even use the term worthiness, but am I good enough? Did I screw up? Am I annoying people? This is the thing that like the chapter, right? The narrative that we build around somebody just saying no to us at that particular time. So what I've realized, Heather, is that confidence, essentially, we get it so wrong. It's really simple. Like, confidence is the willingness to be rejected. Like the willingness to be shut down, embarrassed, humiliated, like whatever negative emotion we fear so much, and human beings will do anything to avoid pain in those cases. The confident people among us simply don't worry so much about it. We're willing to kind of go there. We're willing to be rejected and do it again and do it and do it again. And success is volume, right?
Well, and the one thing that I learned from you and going to Pitch Please was that you're not really being rejected. Like,
no.
these people are busy and they need you to follow up multiple times. Like, they actually want you to. And I know that the more, I don't like the term busy, but the more full your life gets, you don't have the capacity for the bullshit. Like, you literally don't have, you're just like, boom, okay, what do I want? Universe, bring it to me. Boom, this person replies. Like, they follow up. You're like, yes, thank you very much. And if someone's hiding, like, you're not going to be able to go and find that person. You just don't have the capacity for it. So the ones who are willing to put themselves out there are going to get the publicity, or to be able to get seen.
It's true. I always say the people who are getting media and the people who aren't, the people who are pitching consistently and those who aren't, there is nothing special or quality. These things, they're just not true. People are just either in the game or you're not. And this applies to almost everything, doesn't it? Like, when you think about it, those of us who keep going, who simply, we keep going, and we don't tell ourselves that, that it's really meaningful, or rejection is something that's bad. It's often just like not the right timing, or we need to be a little flexible. That's all. And I think when you adopt that, Heather, what isn't available to you? Like, what would you be doing if you could live with it, if you could live with the temporary feeling of maybe disappointment? Like, what more would you be doing? In a lot of cases, we'd be doing a lot more. Like, we just simply would be far more active, taking far more action, because the negativity that we feel, the negative emotions that we experience, they just don't seem so scary. Plus, they're all temporary anyway, just like good emotions are.
I always think about how the actions that I had to take to get to where I am today. And that if I just sat, people will say, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, I don't have the resources. And I'm like, well, you can sit in that, but like, what's the point? Like, if you're not moving forward, you're stuck. Like, to me, I'm like, if you're not growing, you're dying. So why not allow yourself to be rejected? Why not allow yourself to fail? I want to talk about this fear of failure for a second. It feels a little bit different than the fear of rejection. And I do not understand it. And I don't know why. Maybe it was just a survival strategy for me. I don't believe failure exists unless you actually quit something, like you give up on it. So I don't resonate with that, like, fail often.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, when you think about it, if you ever research any successful person, they have this string of failures, and they actually love talking about them. They love it because they're like, how many times it took me to get this one thing right? And think about it. Think about all the things that you've had to do in order to create something successful. There are a lot of like failed launches, failed ideas, failed proposals, failed collaborations. It's just like life, right?
It's like, if it works, you're like, oh my gosh, that was a 1 in a million chance. I was expecting this to go nowhere.
It's so funny. It's like, what do we expect? Everything to just, like, everything that we want to work out the first time, or for us to be perfect at something out of the gate. Like, where did that come from? I mean, it's completely nuts. And when you think about, failure, fearing failure, I think, yes, it comes from this prehistoric brain where, if we get left behind by the tribe, if we make a mistake, that would mean certain death, right? And we still have these parts of our brain. But when you think about it, like you, I feel the same way, that failure, again, is a bit of an illusion. It's an interpretation. And stopping is the only way to guarantee that you won't get the result that you want, right? Stopping is the only way. If you stop online dating, right? If you stop fertility treatments, if you stop, going for your business or whatever it may be, then yeah, you won't get the result. But everything else, it's like game on, right? Like, who knows? And you have to, somebody said once, I can't remember who it was, but she said, in order to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to be like a pathological optimist.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. And it's, well, I feel that way about every life area. You have to absolutely believe, like Olympic style level, that it is possible. Your optimism has to be like it's the most important thing that you can possess.
I personally growing up have never identified as somebody who has an athletic bone in my body. Like I never was on a sports team. I did a little bit of gymnastics and I failed at that. I almost became a contortionist because I was very flexible. But other than that, I didn't really try at much, like from a sports level. And the more that I pursue my business goals and my personal goals and my relationship goals with my children and my partner, the more I realize I am an athlete. Like I am an athlete, and every day I need to ask myself, am I like, not bettering my game, but am I preparing myself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually to win this race, quote unquote, win this race, whatever that means, in a sustainable way. I'm curious your perspective on that.
Yes, it's true, isn't it? I mean, I think a lot of the time we think that this is just how it is, right? We think life, whatever it may be, like our relationships, our work, our income, feeling it's fixed, like whatever it may be, we're like, well, this is just how it is. And this is how beliefs are a little bit dangerous. And most people, if you're somebody who questions your belief, like you're in the top 10% of people, because most people just say, well, that's how people are, or that is or isn't for somebody like me, or this is available, that isn't available. These people can be trusted, these people can't. Like we have all these beliefs, which we never really examine, right? We get them from like our parents initially, and then just the world, often just the people that we have relationships with, what we observe. But when you think about it, like what is a belief anyway? Like everyone is having such a different human experience. And like really, what is a belief? And I love when I'm coaching anybody, I will, and have an area of their life that isn't satisfying, whatever it may be, say it's relationships. We'll have to kind of go into the belief, right? And so we'll say, for example, my parents were divorced and it was really ugly, and that's why I can't find love, or I can't trust men or women. And this is a traditional cause and effect model in psychology, right? This happened and there was this cause, this parents' ugly divorce, and then the effect is I can't trust or love. And if that were true, if this cause and effect model were true, that would mean that every single person whose parents had an ugly divorce could never have a happy relationship. So it's nonsense, right? This cause and effect. And I love to flip it. I love to say, okay, maybe being in a relationship requires courage, honesty, vulnerability, you showing up in a different way, a different level of intimacy. And that's hard. So let's blame your parents, right? So
let's project.
Yes.
Let's project. I don't want to own those uncomfortable feelings. So let's just blame our parents.
Yeah. And let's find an excuse that everyone can sympathize with.
Yeah.
Right. We get very good at this, and we can just keep saying it. And the thing is, well, it's okay. You can do that. It's your life. But what's the result going to be? And this is where, again, taking responsibility has to come in. What mom and dad did, they had their life, they had their choices. That's unfortunate, maybe. But so what? Really, what's it to you? And this is where when you take that kind of personal accountability, you're like, oh no, I've got nothing to hide behind, which is scary initially. But that is where your juicy freedom is. And then it's up to you to think about a new belief. And look, you can always find evidence everywhere of people who have happy marriages with terribly dysfunctional parents, people who have, great abundance in their life, even with no education, like whatever it may be, because there is always evidence out there, and your subconscious mind will always find the evidence that proves your belief right. So it's so important to look, whatever area of your life that isn't satisfying, question your beliefs, literally write it down, what I believe about money, what I believe about men, what I believe about friendship, whatever it is, and then let it flow. And this takes courage, this work, Heather. But once you do it, wow, I mean, a shift can happen in a snap, and it's the coolest thing to observe.
I show people there's a model, and I know a lot of people teach this, and I don't necessarily know where I adopted it from, because I'm sure we take it all from everywhere. belief, thought, action, reality. So I'm like, what's happening, right? Like, tell me what's happening. Okay, reverse engineer that. Like, what action or inaction did you take to actually create that? Well, I didn't send those emails. I didn't reach out. I didn't, I yelled at my child. I did whatever. And it's like, you can watch that belief. It's like a clock, right? Allowed you to tell yourself these stories, which made you feel guilty. And then therefore you didn't do the work because you thought you had to, in my case with a lot of the women I work with, like you had to be with your children 24 hours a day. And then your reality is you're angry and resentful at your family because you're not living your dreams and blah, 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 blah. But it's like, you got to feel the pain and do it anyways. Like, I'm not saying hustle and push, but you got to feel the discomfort, which is going back to the conversation we were talking about, which is like the grit and resilience. You're not going to die if you feel your fear a little bit and do it anyways.
Exactly. And this is why our thinking is so important. And this is why making sure that our mind is self-directed, not just like at the whim of comments we get. Our mother-in-law said some garbage comment that someone made 3 years ago that we still hold on. Like, that's where we have to give it up. Like, we have to say, okay, yes, those things may have been true. It hurt what it was that I received, but really, so what? Like, this has to be in it. Like, there has to be perspective here, and that's going to be on repeat for me. Like, there has to be something else. And then when you kind of lovingly let a few things go, and even just connect with love with some people if you need to do, then you start to see that your thoughts can be changed, but it has to happen with intention. It doesn't just magically happen for you in the morning.
I think it goes back to I love this conversation, and it goes back to being an athlete. Like, this is not a one and done. You don't read one book and your life is changed forever. And there's passive learning and active learning.
Yes. Oh, yes. It's true.
You can't just absorb the information, listen to the podcast and go, oh, I've absorbed some positivity. Our actions need to align with that in order to change the thought process.
Yes, it's true. And then when you start to take the action, like we don't, clear the fear, right? And then do the things, right? We do the things and then the fear becomes clear, right? There's no way of getting around it. It's not like, let me just meditate here until I feel really calm and like not afraid, and then I'll take some action. It's like, just get busy.
I think you're really, really good at that. Were you always like that, or has that
action
just
taking?
Or has that just become a strategy, like a skill you've developed?
I think that I know how overwhelming fear is, and you can't give it too much time, right? It's almost like if you're going to do anything scary, right? If you're going to go zip lining, you can't be overthinking it. So yeah, I like taking action because it's far more calming than doing nothing. I think doing nothing or, waiting or making it ready is something that happens, that's kind of where we have our most suffering. I think it was Mark Twain. He said, some awful things have happened in my life. Some terrible things have happened in my life, or I've experienced some terrible things, and some of them actually took place, right? Meaning it's the thinking, and I just refuse to overthink anything. Yeah. And that means that I can live in a place of creation, but also, I'm not in my mind. And like when we're in our too much, it can be a dark place, right? It can be a dark and dangerous place in there. So I think, being busy is just part of the, like, feeling fun, feeling joy, doing the things. Yeah.
So I want to know, like, I'm writing a book myself right now, and it's been an interesting creative process. So what was I want to write this book? What made you actually write this book?
Yes. Working as a columnist, as a coach, all the questions and letters I was receiving and what was coming up, it was, various forms, different stories, different backgrounds, but the same thing essentially. And what I realized over the years is that it's not fear of failure even necessarily that's the thing that's terrifying, because human beings, look what we've survived, like humankind, what we've been through. When you even just read human stories of what people have overcome, like human beings are resilient and adaptable and strong. So it's not the fear of failure. I think on some level it is, but we know, I think at our core, that we can live through some stuff and get by. But what I realized was really holding people back from kind of going for it with anything is the judgment of the failure, perceived failure from other people. So it's like, I could live through a failed business, right? But what would my dad say? Or what would my friend at school say, who always was a bit of a bitch, right? Or what would my ex-husband say? So I've learned that the fear of judgment is the thing that's the scariest. And I think when we can put judgment in its place a little bit and know that people aren't obsessed with us, right? Thinking about us all the time, watching our every move, right? We really healthy relationship in terms of what it means if, you know, somebody else's interpretation of us, knowing first of all they aren't doing it as much as they think, knowing that whatever judgment comes out of anybody else's mouth or out of their mind is a reflection of them through their own lens, then we live this very free life because we're like, well, I'm just kind of going to do what feels right for me using my own inner guidance. And that has to be the thing. Like that has to be the like that has to be what I trust, not what somebody else says, what my parents believe, what, you know, what my husband or wife thinks is best for me.
I think that's so important to really trust your gut, trust your intuition. And I think it's also easier said than done to just say, trust your gut, trust your intuition. Because a lot of the women that come to me are like, what does that mean? Like, I get the question a lot. And I've had to work through this myself, of course. Knowing the difference between, fear, like resistance and intuition, like fear and resistance. Like, when am I afraid of something versus when am I just resisting something that I'm supposed to lean into?
Yeah.
And so really dissecting, like, knowing yourself and that intuitive place. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think it's a really fair question because they can feel identical, right? It's like a feeling of no, don't do it, right? Because that's it. It's like, no, I'm just going to say exactly where I am and do nothing, right? That's the feeling. And whenever we feel afraid, and it can feel like an intuitive nudge, right? And it can be a bit tricky to interpret. So first of all, it gets way easier the more you practice your intuition. First of all, right? Like if you're a bit out of sync with it, if you haven't been relying on it or checking in with it, or like asking, right? Checking in with yourself, you can feel like it's out of touch, but you know what? It's always there on demand, like ready for you. It wants you to call on it. So the way that I differentiate it essentially is, if you know any like NLP techniques, if it comes to a decision, you know, to make a decision specifically, one great technique which is in the book is just say that there's a decision you have to make, and there are say two outcomes. I mean, there could be more, but for argument's sake, we'll just say two. You just sit back, you breathe, you imagine, you think of the question, and then you picture the two outcomes. Right? You actually picture them physically, like in your mind, visually, like how they appear physically, using your senses. And then the right answer is going to be whatever makes your body relax. Even if it is going to require work, the relaxation can coexist with feelings of expansion. And that expansiveness might be scary, but your body will tell you. You can see how your body responds. Like, does it feel looser? Does it feel just more relaxed? That's the way forward. Our bodies are so intelligent, Heather, like these billions of cells, like they're working for us. And we just cut them out, right? We're like, oh, I don't know. Let's see what everybody has to say. Let's crowdsource the answer. Nobody knows. Like, doing all from their very own personal lens, you know, how they interpret the world. That's just not what your experience is here to be. So I love like trusting the body, how your body responds. And frankly, if you don't want to do that, you can say, okay, what feels expansive? Fear doesn't feel expansive. It feels restrictive. Doing something new and scary that you know will kind of like help you level up or, you know, bring you a new skill. Even though it feels a bit daunting, it still feels bigger somehow. And so that's a good judge too.
I love it. And then so when you trust the decision, then you have to take that action in the direction of the decision. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I would rather a 5 out of 10 action immediately than tomorrow 10 out of 10.
I know.
Sure.
I'm like, I am an action taker. My husband says like shoot, I fire, aim.
Oh yeah.
It's like, I go before I'm ready.
Good. Yeah.
And sometimes it's backlashed, you know, when I'm like, okay, Heather, you did that as a coping strategy at first to get you moving. Now you should probably think a little bit longer before you do that. But you learn from, I wouldn't be where I am right now if I didn't stumble and fall and get back up and go, shit, that noodle didn't stick. Okay, cool. What happens? But yeah, there's a time and the place for all of it. But action, I always say action is where the magic happens. You're going to learn so much more about yourself than thinking it.
And one time when my husband and I were in couples therapy, I love couples therapy, by the way. If anyone resists it, I'm like, why? It's so good, right? And we were in couples therapy, and one of the things that he said to us, because I'm action, and my husband's more like, let's think it through, right? Let's think it through, which is actually a really nice match, especially as business partners. But the therapist said to him, because sometimes like Keith is frustrated with me because I'm like, go, let's just do it, send it, go, like pitch it, like whatever it is, right? And the therapist said to him, which I think helped him appreciate me in a different light. He said, if it weren't for Susie's go, and just like, taking action, not knowing, but just blind faith in a lot of cases, he said, your business would be a fantasy. It would be an idea waiting to happen for a long, long time. So you can really give her a lot of credit for that. And then, of course, I have to appreciate him for like looking at everything through a different lens too. But I was like, yes, it's true, because the things that we're going to do, right? I mean, come on, going to do, later is never.
No.
Later is never, in so many cases.
My husband and I have a very similar relationship. And I used to get very angry and resentful. And my story was, why do I always need to be the one to make things happen? And I would say that over and over again. And then I would be angry and resentful. But I'm like, no, there's the yin and the yang here. If he was like me, that would be exhausting with like action. So, we'll talk about a vacation. He'll research the vacation. I'm like, just fucking book it already. Like, just stop trying to find the best deal. Just jump off the cliff already. How can you handle sitting there in all of the unknown? It just feels dirty to me after a while.
Are we related?
Yeah, it's like I'm allergic to it. I'm like, shut up already.
I know. It's like Keith will research the furniture. And I'm like, just buy that one. It looks good, Make
sure they have a good refund policy or return policy.
Well, it's true, but yeah, like action. And then also this is why we need to all value each other, because we all need a bit of, we need like kind of different opinions, but like when it comes to action though, overall, I would say most people don't have this bias towards action. They have a bias towards waiting. Yeah. And if you could, again, just like let it a little bit more in, like let it feel risky, like let it feel risky and scary. Remember, the worst thing that can happen is a negative temporary emotion.
Yeah. So, and people aren't paying attention to you. They don't even know. That's the whole reason. I've discovered that as a business owner, when they say average time of 7, whatever, before people, it's like, and I'm watching other people and then I'll talk to them and they're like, nobody's buying. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but like, I haven't even seen your thing that you're, putting out there in the world. And it takes so much more effort behind the scenes because we're in our own world.
You're absolutely right. Somebody said to me that she's terrified to cast because if she gets a negative review, it will break, right? I mean, at least it was honest. And I'm like, oh, and I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. And of course you will get negative reviews. Expect them. If you're doing well, you expect a lot of negative reviews. Congratulations, right? Whenever someone's like, oh my gosh, I had a media feature and somebody said that, and I'm like, congrats, awesome, great, you're doing something, you're moving people. The worst thing is when there's nothing, right? Like, do
you feel that now? Like when you're getting any quote unquote negative feedback or reviews or anything, do you feel anything? And how do you process that?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I hope I haven't become a complete brick wall, but I don't think really. I mean, but also in a way, a little bit same with the good though. Like you can't just choose one.
Right.
If someone's like, oh my gosh, this changed my life, I'm like, I'm very pleased, right? And if someone's like, you look like a man, I tell a story in my book where someone says I look like a man, you're trash. I'm like, okay, well that's also okay, right? It's nothing to do with me, really.
How do you think you have that conviction though? Like, where did you get that from?
It's practiced, right? So like whenever you think about it, like think about how we sometimes revere people and celebrate them, right? Think about how we criticize and judge others. It doesn't really matter who or what or when, but the feelings are coming from a place within us, right? And I know that if someone's judging my looks, they're judging their looks, right? If someone like, just say you went to Europe with like an architect, right? I say this because I've done it. They tell you, oh, look up. Do you see this? Do you see that? You're like, I didn't even see any of that. Right. And so what someone's seeing all the time is based on their own, their deeply personal experience and bias. So I know if somebody says like something mean or something nice or whatever, they're just affirming who they are, like what it is that they see. But because the flaws or the merits of a person, we project. So none of it's actually true. If you couldn't like say, okay, is this person attractive? Is this person clever? Like there is no fact, right? It's just our interpretation. So whatever somebody's saying, I know it's not really about me. And I know that's true because even if I go to criticize somebody, if I'm like, that woman is, she's getting a bit too big for her boots, whatever, I'm probably thinking I'm probably not doing enough at the moment and she's doing really well. That's really the subtext of the comment. So and when we feel good, we don't criticize other people. So too, I also know that it's also an invitation to give some compassion if somebody's criticizing me because they're just clearly not feeling great.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. I've had, I'm not there yet 100%.
Yeah. 100. This is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Heather. Yeah.
No, it's interesting because I feel sometimes I'll catch myself. But people will always ask, how do you have a comment for that person that will say something? And in person is different because a lot of people, what do they call them? Like keyboard warriors, like they love to do things, but they won't say it to your face. But when people say things to your face, it's just so beautiful. I just stare at them and I'm like, thank you. And they're like, what? Like, thank you so much for sharing how you truly feel about yourself.
Well, at least, when it comes to face, most people have no like ability to do that, right? It's all like kind of hidden.
Yeah.
But people also have the right. The way that I think about it is no one really, being unkind is never cool no matter what, right? But when you understand like a person's motivation, like the people who we want to love the least deserve our love the most.
Yes.
Right? It's like in A Course in Miracles, it says everything is either a demonstration of love or a call for love. And it's pretty simple when you look at the world that way. Then there's people calling for love a lot of the time, just going about it in a way that isn't really going to be helpful for them. And then it also says in A Course in Miracles, which I love, in my defenselessness, my safety lies, meaning just never defend yourself. I have a policy where I never defend myself. Somebody said to me once, oh, like I sound like a real bitch or something like that because I said something around boundaries. And I said something around boundaries. And I said, well, call my ex-husband, he would agree with you. What else am I going to say?
Yeah.
Life. And so I was like, well, yeah, okay, yeah, you probably have a friend in him. It's a joke, but if I'm like, well, why I'm not a bitch, why are women called bitches? That's going to that place where they are. And I don't know, not today. That's just how I feel.
I love this, Susie. Okay. So we're going to wrap it up, but I want to talk about the importance, because I think, we always say it's a reflection of other people's experiences, but sometimes we are being a bitch, or sometimes, our stuff is coming up. And I take advice from people, Brene Brown talks about it, like, people who are in the arena with you. So then you have, your inner circle where you're like, give me honest, critical feedback. Right.
Yes.
And so what is your perspective on that from people's perceptions versus you as a human who's just going through this experience and getting that feedback from those people who matter?
I think feedback that you listen to, it's whoever, if I'm giving feedback and I know somebody's listening, I think that's a real privilege. That's something that's earned. It's not just like, hey stranger on the internet, why don't you just give me some, like, tell me your thoughts, right? It's like, it has to be extremely selective because the people who are giving you the feedback have to be, frankly, at your level or further ahead in what it is that they're commenting on. Too. Like when you think about what area, like I wouldn't go to somebody who's had like 7 failed marriages and ask marriage advice, right? Right. And I wouldn't ask someone who's never started a business, like, their opinion on something.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to be really selective with who you kind of access and you take everything with a pinch of salt still, no matter what. And then you take what feels right for you. but I think it has to be a very small list, and the person has to be not qualified in a traditional sense, but you have to respect them in that area. When it comes to it, like how many people are on that list, it's not very many. And that's awesome because it's completely manageable and there is no overwhelm required. And the feedback can be nice and concise and just right for you.
Yeah. I have had this weird relationship with feedback in general, right? So when you have an event and you pass around like feedback forms,
yes.
And you're like, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to meet all of these expectations because they're just all over the place, right? So you take it as like one collective, like what is the common denominator here? But for myself, I've had to ask myself over and over again, like, that's just their perception. Were they a good fit? Like, was this ideal for them? And am I manipulating myself to meet these people's expectations, or is this what I want to provide and offer to the world?
Absolutely. And look, it's helpful to get information, right? But we have to filter that too, just using our own guidance, using our own experience, and know too. I mean, again, in a lot of cases, if you get negative feedback, was that person just in a bad mood? Like, are they going through something? Like, I think we have to give everything. We can take it all a little bit less seriously, like in life, everything in general, first of all. But then, like, whenever someone's saying something, just kind of giving it a bit of perspective and not making it like this is the truth and it is so important and it's life and death. It's just someone's opinion on that particular day. And you can take what works and leave the rest.
Love it. Okay, so Susie, book, stop. Oh, geez, I just whacked myself in the face. Stop checking your likes, shake off the need for approval, and live an incredible life. Where can people get this? And what do you have going on? Where else can they find you?
Yes, you can get it everywhere books are sold, which is very exciting. And I have some free confidence resources just over at my website, which is susie-more.com.
Amazing. And who do you typically work with? Like, who is attracted to your work and community?
I noticed, I think naturally, a lot of women come to me because I write a lot of topics from a female perspective, of course. But then I find that more and more it's just people who want to. If I could give it the type of person who really kind of enjoys my world and my communities, it's people who want to kind of lose their oppressing energies and just become free and live fuller, kind of more exciting lives.
They want to experience joy.
Yes, and don't we all? Isn't that the point?
Yeah.
Why are we here? To have a good time, not a long time.
Exactly. Thank you, Susie, so much for being here. I love it, and I can't wait to dive in more.
Thank you so much, Heather. Mwah.